So let me ask you something. Have you ever had that weird feeling that maybe none of this is actually real? That's the exact question that pretty much consumed René Descartes. He was a 17th century thinker who looked around and felt that all of human knowledge was, well, built on shaky ground. So he took on one of the boldest projects in the history of thought, to tear everything down to the studs and start over, all on the search for one single, undeniable truth. And he kicks things off with a question that really gets under your skin. How can you be absolutely 100% sure that you're awake right now, watching this? I'm serious. What if this is all just an incredibly vivid, detailed dream? This is the rabbit hole that Descartes wants us to go down. His journey, funnily enough, doesn't start by building, but by demolishing, with a wrecking ball. This whole process is his famous method of radical doubt. And he set a simple rule for himself. If he could find even the tiniest reason to doubt a belief, he would treat it as completely false until he could prove it was true. No exceptions. And you can really feel his frustration in his own words here. He's looking back at his entire education, at everything he was ever taught, and basically concluding that the whole foundation is rotten. He knew he needed a complete reset, a total reboot of his knowledge. Okay, so his first target? Our own senses. He points out something we've all experienced. He'd had dreams that felt completely real, dreams where he was sitting by the fire, totally convinced, only to wake up and find himself in bed. His point is, there's no secret sign, no definitive test to prove with absolute certainty that you're not dreaming this very second. So everything you see, hear, and feel, well, that all goes into the doubtful pile for now. But he doesn't stop there. Oh no, he pushes it way further. This is his master stroke of doubt. He says, okay, forget dreams. Imagine there's a supremely powerful, cunning, and malicious demon, and its entire purpose is to deceive you about everything. This demon could be tricking you not just about the outside world, but even about truths that seem completely unshakable, like the fact that 2 + 3 = 5. What if it doesn't, and the demon's just making you think it does? So now he's at rock bottom. The senses are gone, logic is gone, even math is on shaky ground. Is there anything left at all? It turns out there is, and the escape route, believe it or not, is hidden inside the very act of being deceived. Think about it. Let this powerful demon do its absolute worst. Let it manipulate every single thought, every sensation, every belief you have. And here it is, the brilliant breakthrough. If I am being deceived, then there has to be an I for the demon to deceive in the first place. I can doubt everything else in the universe, but I cannot possibly doubt that I am the one who is doing the doubting. And that brings us to maybe the most famous phrase in all of philosophy. The one solid point in a universe of doubt. Cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. The very act of thinking proves the existence of the thinker. This was the solid ground he was looking for, the foundation upon which he was going to try and rebuild everything. Now, this is a really crucial point. This I he's talking about, it isn't a body. His body could still be an illusion cooked up by that demon. This I that he's certain of is purely a mind, a consciousness. He calls it a res cogitans, which is just Latin for a thinking thing, a thing that doubts and understands and affirms and imagines. So, with this one certainty clutched in his hand, I exist as a thinking thing, Descartes starts the slow, careful process of putting reality back together. And his very next move is to prove the existence of God. Now, this argument can get famously complex, but the basic logic goes something like this. He says, step 1, I find within myself an idea of a perfect, infinite being, God. Step 2, an idea has to come from somewhere, and the cause has to be at least as real as the effect. Step 3, he looks at himself and says, look, I'm a finite, imperfect being. I make mistakes. I have doubts. So how could an imperfect creature like him just invent the idea of pure perfection out of thin air? He concludes he couldn't. So, step 4, the only possible source for that idea of perfection must be a truly perfect and infinite being who placed it there. In other words, God must exist. So why is this so incredibly important? Well, because if God is perfect, then God can't be a deceiver. Lying and tricking people, that's an imperfection. This means that evil demon can't exist because a perfect God wouldn't allow it. God becomes a sort of guarantee. God guarantees that when we use our reason carefully to perceive something vividly and clearly, it must be true. All of a sudden, the world is knowable again. So, with his foundation now secure, Descartes lays out a new picture of reality, and it's a reality that's split into two fundamentally different kinds of stuff.
This is the famous Cartesian dualism. On one side, you've got the mind, the res cogitans, the thinking thing. It's totally non-physical. It has no size, no shape, and you can't divide it into pieces. Its whole essence is just thought. On the other side, you have the body, the res extensa, the extended thing. This is all the physical stuff in the universe. It has size, shape, it exists in space, and you can divide it. Its essence is extension. Two completely separate worlds. But this method of clear, logical thinking wasn't just for abstract philosophy. Descartes applied it to mathematics, and the results, well, they were absolutely revolutionary. They changed everything. In his work, La Géométrie, he did something that seems completely obvious to us now, but was a total bombshell back then. He basically fused algebra and geometry into one. Before him, they were two separate disciplines. He showed that you could take a shape in space and describe it perfectly with an algebraic equation. This was the invention of what we now call analytic geometry. Oh, and by the way, you know the letters X, Y, and Z we use for unknowns in algebra? Yep, that was him. I mean, this is the perfect example of how powerful his idea was. You can take a physical shape, a parabola, and capture it perfectly with a simple, elegant equation, y equals x squared. This completely unlocked a new way of understanding and controlling the physical world through the certainty of mathematics. It was a real game changer. Finally, all of this comes together in his grand vision for a single, unified system of all human knowledge. He described it all using the metaphor of a tree. The roots of the tree, he said, are metaphysics. These are the certain foundations. I think, therefore I am. God exists, the mind-body split. Then, growing out of those strong roots is the trunk, which is physics, the basic principles of the material world. And finally, you get the branches, which are all the practical sciences, medicine, mechanics, and morals. Those are the fruits of the entire system. And that was his ultimate goal, not just a random collection of facts, but a single, interconnected tree of knowledge, growing from a root of absolute, undeniable certainty. It was his attempt to give science a foundation as solid as logic itself. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Descartes went on this epic journey to find the one thing he couldn't doubt, and then used it to rebuild his entire universe from scratch. It really makes you wonder, if you had to tear everything down, if you had to throw out every single belief that had even a shadow of a doubt, what would be the one certain point you would start building from?